Subject-verb agreement is the most common error you're going to see on the SAT, so obviously it pays to learn it and know it really well because that's a lot of points. So what is subject-verb agreement? When we say a subject and its verb have to agree, we mean that they must agree in number. So in other words, if the subject is singular, the verb must be singular. If the subject is plural, the verb must be plural. Now this really only applies to the present tense because if you look at the conjugation of past tense, generally all of them end in ed unless it's in irregular form. So for instance, I walked, you walked, he walked, we walked, they walked. Just ends in walked, right? Right, it ends in ed. If I'm looking at swim, right, it's he swam, she swam, it swam, you swam, we swam, they swam. No real ending changes. The only place where this really matters is the present tense. Present tense, simple present. So remember again, just to reiterate, singular verbs end it with an S, and plural verbs do not end in an S. Plural nouns, on the other hand, end in S, while singular nouns do not end in S. So there are two different rules depending on whether you're looking at nouns or verbs, how the S comes into play. So for example, the boys talk. So notice boys is plural. Talk then is going to be the right form because it's going to be the plural form of the verb here. Whereas if we have a singular boy, we're going to have the singular talks. So notice the difference. Notice where the S is going in both situations. Right? So and if you speak English, you know this. So don't confuse yourself or don't let me confuse you out of what you already know if you speak the language. We're just trying to add some technical meat on your understanding of it. So let's look at some example sentences and find the errors. These are all going to have, or most of them I think, have errors. So let's see what's wrong with these. John walked to the store. Well, wait a minute. No, John is singular. Walk must be singular as well. So notice right now it's plural. So to fix this, we would add an S. Right? Simple enough. How about the next one? John and Mary walks to the store. So here we've got what's called a compound subject. We've got two things connected with an end. That makes it plural. Even though, again, it's two people, they're acting as two, so it's going to be plural. John and Mary walks to the store. Well, wait a minute. No, it's plural. So this is going to just be John and Mary walk to the store. John or the boys steal the money. So when you have or, things are a bit more complex. When you've got and connecting your nouns, it's a compound subject, you're just going to use your plural verb. When you use or, the conjugation of the verb depends on the noun right before it. So here, John or the boys steal, and that's fine. John or the boys steal, no problem. Because this is plural and it matches with the verb, or excuse me, the noun that comes right before it. If we said John or the boy steal the money, here, because boy comes right before the verb, we're going to make this steals, the singular version. So again, not something they're going to test too much on the SAT, but just in case, just so you understand the difference. How about this one? Neither the boys nor John steal the money. Same idea. Even though it's nor, it just acts just like or, John is going to make this steals because this is singular. It's the one right before the verb, so we're going to use the singular form of the verb. The theory is exciting. Well, theory is singular, and the verb is singular, so this is fine, right? Theory is an object, it's a thing, so yeah, no problem. The theory about the birth and death of stars, blank exciting. So be very careful. Now we're going into examples that are a little bit closer to what you might see on the SAT. We need to put in the verb either is or are. So the question is, which one is it? So the subject of the sentence is still the theory, right? All this stuff is just prepositional phrase stuff. And again, we'll talk more about prepositional phrases in a later video. Even though this is plural and it's right next to the noun, right next to the verb, it's not the subject. Stuff in prepositional phrases doesn't count when you're looking for the subject. So the subject is still the theory, which is singular. So this is still going to be is. The theory about the birth and death of stars is exciting. So this is one of the main tricks they're going to pull on the SAT. You're going to see your subject and then a bunch of junk and then your verb. And you have to make that connection back to your subject to find if it's an error or not. The team win the game. So here, again, going to collective nouns, like we talked about in the previous or a couple previous videos. The team, it's a group of individuals, but it's acting as one. So we're going to treat it as singular, which means we must have the team wins the game. How about this one? Everybody likes to eat. Well, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but everybody, we treat this as singular. Again, even though it's, referencing multiple people, we treat it as grammatically singular. And I'll have, like I said, a separate video on it later. So this would be everybody likes to eat. How about this? They're blank, three kinds of people. So it is or are. Well, what is or are here? Well, it's three kinds of people, which is plural. So we would use are. So the subject here would be three kinds of people, or, depending on how you look at it. Basically, it's going to make it that plural verb. Finally, my baby brother, who always got bad grades, is or are in detention today. Well, again, even though we have the stuff in commas and grades comes right before the verb, this is not the subject. In fact, you can almost just remove it from the sentence for a second to find the subject, which is, of course, my baby brother. Who is in detention? My baby brother is in detention. So this is going to be is. So those are some examples of subject-verb agreement errors. Obviously, there's a lot more. So definitely check out the SAT Math Tactics series on this. There are 4 videos total, but 3 that are actually up on YouTube already. So go ahead and check those out if you want to see some actual examples on the SAT of where this error comes up. Because like I said, it's one of the more common ones. All right, let's go to the next video.